This is a quick video to review interval notation. So essentially what we want to do is we want to convert set notation to an interval that essentially lists out the numbers within the interval. So for instance, if we want to look at x is greater than 2 or x is less than -1. These are intervals that do not include a specific point. We're leaving out the point 2, we're leaving out the point -1. So for instance, if we look at x is greater than 2, we create an open dot at 2, and we move forward off of this. So if we think about creating an interval from left to right, we are starting at 2, and we are ending at infinity. Now notice both of these get parentheses because neither one are included in the set. 2 is not included, we're including everything up to 2. And infinity really can't be bounded, so we can never really close it off. Likewise, if we wanted to go with x is less than -1, we would have another open dot here, and then we would be going backwards off of this one. So in this case, if you think about from left to right, your left point is really -infinity, and you're going up to -1, and then you have a parentheses to not include that point. So these ones use parentheses. Infinity always uses parentheses. What happens if we want to include the point? If we want to include the point, for instance, x is greater than or equal to 2, and x is less than or equal to -1, then in this case we end up with a closed dot, because we want to include that point, and again we move forward. So if we think about it this way, we want to include the point, so we give it a new symbol, a bracket, to make sure that it's closed and included. And then we go forward to infinity, and again, infinity always gets parentheses. The starting and ending grouping symbol does not need to be the same. If we look at x is less than or equal to -1, again, we have a closed dot at -1, and we are moving backwards off of this point. So we've got -infinity is our starting point, again, parentheses for infinity. And then we're going up to -1, so that is going to get the bracket. That's the point that's included. So notice the difference between the two red intervals and the two. In the first one, the 2 is not included, so we have a parentheses. In the second one, it is included, so we have a bracket. Same thing here for the orange intervals. We've got -infinity to -1, so we're not including that -1, but then in the second set, we are. One last set to look at is what happens when you have x is not equal to, for instance, 1. In that case, you would end up with an open dot at 1 because you're not including it, but you would have an arrow going backwards and forwards off of it. And since you have two arrows, you need two intervals. So your first interval here is going to be from -infinity to 1, and again, everything is in parentheses because we're not including that 1. And then your second interval is from 1 to infinity, so that's taking everything greater than 1. And to put these together, we use a U for the union symbol. It means you're putting these two sets together, you're unioning them. And if you look at the way the number line works, we've essentially split it here at 1 to exclude the point 1 by creating these parentheses here that come up to infinitely close to 1, but never quite include it. So for instance, if we look at the lesson from 4.1 when we're talking about domain, then if we want to look at this first one, which is all reals, then we are going to include all numbers, which go from -infinity to infinity. We're including everything, excluding no points. For the second domain here, we have x is greater than or equal to -5. So greater than or equal to gives us a closed dot at -5, and we're moving forward off of that. So our starting point is a bracket at -5, and then we are moving forward to infinity, which gets a parentheses. Again, we're including -5 with the bracket. Infinity always gets parentheses. The last example here, x is not equal to -7, so we have an open dot at -7, and again, we're going backwards and forwards off of this, so we have two arrows, two intervals that will be unioned together. So this leftmost arrow, we want to make sure we put them in order. We want everything to go from left to right, is going to be -infinity to -7, unioned with -7 to infinity. And again, we've split that all real of the negative infinity to infinity at the point -7 and put those parentheses in so that we know not to include that point. So hopefully this clears up any confusion that anyone has had. You can go on and complete your homework.